In the next clip, we're going to create the starting point to the racing rim. So we're going to go to Create, Polygon Primitives, Pipe. Now let's take this pipe and scale it up a bit. Now, before you use any of the properties in the object itself, it is best to work with the global settings first, like the scale, rotate, and translation, when you're working with a real-world, large-scale project like this. Once you have the results that you're looking for, say for instance, I'm setting the scale to this pipe to about 6, and then the rotate Z to -90. Now, when I work with the radius, height, and thickness, I wouldn't have to double the input settings to get the size I need. Okay, so now let's start with the radius. And we're going to try to match it with the edge of the inner bevel of the rim. So let's say around 5, maybe 5.5. Looks pretty good. And as for the thickness, let's say around 3.3 should work. Now, the subdivision axis is the most important part here. Without the right amount of subdivisions, you won't be able to model the 6 spokes properly. But if we set the subdivisions to say 24, we'll be able to add the 6 spokes and still have an even amount of faces in between each spoke. However, the second pipe we'll be making is also important when it comes to the subdivisions because it's a larger piece. I'll explain that a little bit later. Alright, so next we'll select the faces on the top, and we're going to extrude the faces out just a little bit. Let's try not to exceed towards the edge of the rim. We're going to hit F9, which switches us to vertex mode. And we're going to select these vertices along the edge of each spoke. Next, we'll grab our scale tool, and we'll scale our verts up a bit towards the corners of the spokes. Now, you see we ran into a little bit of an issue that can easily be corrected. We can go to our front view, and what you'll notice is that when we scaled our verts up, they also scaled out. Because using the scale from the center instead of the X, Y, and Z direction, it'll scale everything globally. Now, this is a simple fix. While we're still in vertex mode, in the front view, we can select all of the verts on one side and scale them in. It's going to line our verts right back up. We can also do the same thing with the verts on the other side. And this won't affect the original setup with our verts. Okay, our next task will be to select the front and back faces on the center of our rim. Now, if you happen to select any of the faces inside the circle here, just simply hold Control and select those unwanted faces. Now, I'm going to switch back to the side view, and we're going to go to wireframe mode here. And right here, we'll go ahead and grab our Insert Edge Loop tool, and we're going to make a loop on the front of the inner rim. And we'll also make one on the back of the inner rim. Alright, great. So the next task we'll do is to take the faces on the front of the rim here, and we're going to extrude it inward. Now, before I recorded this tutorial, I did something here where I could drag the entire set of faces, and it actually worked like a charm, but I forgot how I made that happen, but it's okay. It's perfectly fine. So as we drag these faces in, there are a few faces that stand out. Now, that's not what we want. So what we'll do is target weld these verts into the center. So we'll do that one by one. All right, great, problem solved. So now let's go ahead and grab our Insert Edge Loop tool, and let's add some loops on the edges here. We're also going to add some edge loops at the top of where the hole will be when we create our openings here. Okay, we'll also add one here. And now what we want to do is add one more edge loop in the center of our two edge loops that we've created. But in order to make sure that the loop is in the center, we're going to open up the Insert Edge Loop tool, the options bar actually, by clicking on that little box in the Mesh Tools tab. Or if you have it in the toolbar like I do, just go ahead and double click on it. Now from here, we'll choose multiple edge loops, and then we'll change the number of the edge loops to 1. Now, when you add the edge loop, it's going to automatically place it in the center. Okay, great. Now let's set our edge loop setting back to default. And now we're going to add some edge loops on the back of the inner rim, making sure it's lined up with the front. And you can see that from the side view, you're essentially doing the exact same thing as you did on the front. So there's no need to explain this process again. Okay, so now with our edge mode selected, let's select the edges here along the inner circle of the rim, and we're going to drag those edges into the interior a bit, just to add a little bit of bevel. We'll take our Insert Edge Loop tool again, and we're going to make some edge loops on the inner circle to add some sharpness. We'll also do the same thing with the outer part of the circle here by selecting these edges and then dragging them into the interior. And again, we'll take our Insert Edge Loop tool and add some edge loops. All right, fantastic. Let's go ahead and hit the 3 key and we'll see what our rim looks like so far. All right, it's not bad. It's actually looking pretty good here for the most part. And to unsmooth the model, just tap the 1 key. All right, so in the next module, we're going to work on adding another pipe primitive into our scene, and this will be the outer part of our racing rim. And once we get the amount of subdivisions we need, we're going to combine it with our inner racing rim, which will help create our set of spokes on the rim. So stay tuned and we'll do that in the next lesson.